Hey guys. So this past weekend I put on one of my favorite radar detector tests that I've ever done thus far. And it's one that I've been dreaming of putting on for a while. And basically the objective of this test is to really help illustrate the differences between different tiers of radar detectors. As you guys know, there's a whole bunch of radar detectors on the market. Some of them definitely perform better than others. And the thing is, in ideal situations, in really easy situations, even a really poor performing detector can actually do really well and give you plenty of warning time to give you enough time to slow down and lead to a save. And so it's absolutely true that even really poor performing radar detectors can still work and help you avoid speeding tickets. Yes. The thing is, once things start getting a little bit more challenging, that's when you'll really start to see a difference between different levels of radar detectors, and that's when you're really going to want, the higher levels of radar detectors, the ones that can perform better. Now, this past weekend, I wanted to test this out with a whole bunch of different detectors. So what I did is I went out to 2 different courses. I brought 4 different radar guns and 10 different radar detectors to really go ahead and test all of this stuff. Now, the full final detailed results I'm still working on, putting all the pieces together and getting the results, put together nicely to share with you guys. So once all that is ready, I'll put a link in the video description for those of you guys watching this on YouTube. You can click that link and you can see the full results with all of the different radar detectors. That's not what I'm going to be showing you here in this video. In this video, I want to illustrate the point of the test, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to show you using 2 different radar detectors really the differences that you're going to see in practice. And to illustrate these points, I'm going to be picking the Escort Redline and the Cobra SPX 7800BT. The Redline, out of all these detectors, is actually going to be the best performing, most sensitive radar detector. That's why I'm picking that. The Cobra, out of all the detectors here that I tested, is the worst performing, poorest performing radar detector that I tested out of any of these detectors here. So I'm using 2 detectors on opposite ends of the spectrum to really help illustrate the points clearly. So what we're going to be doing in this test is I'm going to show you first a test in a really easy situation where both detectors actually do really well. In fact, the Cobra alert's only a couple seconds after the red line, and you'll see they'll both give you plenty of warning time. And I'll show you actually on a map. We'll take a look at the map and you'll get to see why this is the case. Then once you see that, and you can see that yes, both detectors can, in ideal situations, actually do really well and give you plenty of warning time. We're going to go ahead and switch to a more difficult, more challenging course, more difficult terrain, and you're going to see that the differences will really start to show themselves with a more sensitive detector and a less sensitive detector. It'll become really, really clear there. We're also going to be using a radar gun that's even more difficult to detect. And then finally, we're going to be using just the red line, and if you change some of the settings on the detector to give it maybe better performance or better reduction of false alerts, whichever combination of settings you use can actually also make a difference in your performance. And so I'm going to show you with just one radar detector what the effect is of changing some of the settings on the detector and why it's important to not only opt for a higher performing detector, but also understand how it works and when it's appropriate to use certain settings versus when it's appropriate to use some other settings. So that's what this video is going to go ahead and show us. So with that said, let's go ahead and start with looking at the easy situations where both detectors actually do really well. Now here's a look at a map of the easy radar detector course. And basically what we're looking at here is we're going to be driving from left to right. The start of the course is over here on the left, and the police, well, quote unquote, the radar gun is going to be over here on this side shooting in this direction. This is the point where the speed is actually going to be able to be acquired. Yet our 2 different radar detectors are both going to alert way over here. Red line a little bit before the Cobra, but there's only a couple seconds worth of difference, and you're going to see that both detectors will actually give you plenty of warning time before you actually get to the kill zone where your speed can be acquired. So the way the course works is you can see we've got a couple curves right here, and then once the things straighten out, we've got the point where the red line is going to alert. It's actually going to alert right where you'll see this intersection on the right side of the road. I'll point it out during the video. and then we'll drive down this way, and because we don't necessarily need to see the whole length of the course with the red line, we'll drive a little bit and then we'll reset. We'll go back and then I'll show you, the same course again where the Cobra alerts, and then just so that you can see, how much time we have before our speed is acquired, we'll go ahead and drive all the way down here to the point where our speed can be acquired, and then ultimately down to the radar vehicle itself. So let's check out, a situation where both radar detectors can actually give you plenty of warning time in practice against a real-world situation. So hey, great job by both detectors. Now in this case, with either detector that you were running, if you happen to be running either the Redline or the Cobra, either one would actually give you plenty of advanced warning before you're able to see the radar gun and the radar gun is able to see you. So realistically, at the end of the day, whichever detector you choose, each one is still going to help you avoid the speeding ticket in this situation, which really is what we're going for, right? So you may say, yes, I know that a more sensitive detector is going to give me more range, and that's great. But the fact is that even the more affordable one is still going to save me from the speeding ticket just the same. So I might as well save the cash, right? Okay, good. If this was the only test that we were looking at, then yes, that would be the case and that would totally make sense. Now, the big differences that we're going to see are when things start to get more difficult. So what we're going to take a look at next is we're going to go ahead and, now that we've taken a look at this course where we've got this nice long straightaway, this is the easy radar detector course. We're now going to take a look at a more difficult radar detector course. And let's take a look at how this one works. So now, same sort of setup. We've got the radar car over here. We've got our kill zone right there where our speed can be acquired. And then the radar detector car that I'm going to be driving is going to be starting over here on this side of the road and driving towards the radar gun. So the objective here is obviously, again, we're going to want to detect the radar gun with as much advanced warning as possible. That's important for both constant on, so we can, slow down, of course. Same thing with instant on. If the gun is turning on and off periodically, if, there's maybe somebody driving right there and I'm way back here, if there's somebody driving right here and they're being clocked, I'm going to want a warning, if I'm back here before it's my turn to be clocked, right? So whether it's constant on or maybe even especially instant on, advanced warning before it's our turn to be clocked is very, very important. That's the whole reason radar detectors work, right? We get warning before we're being clocked. So long range in this case is going to be really important. Anyways, the way we're looking at this course, we're going to start here. There's a red barn, so when we're driving on the left side of the road, you're going to see a big red barn. Now, driving down the road, there's going to be a few S-curves like this. Then we're going to turn down this way. Right here, there's going to be a gap between some trees, which I'll come back to in just a moment. And then we'll drive down here. On the left side of the road, there's going to be this gravel pullout. Just after the pullout is going to be the point where our speed can be acquired. So this is the kill zone right there. And then coming right up here, there's going to be a second gravel pullout where the radar vehicle is actually parked on the left side of the road, shooting this way. So that's the way the course is set up. The entire time while we're driving, you can see there's going to be some trees over here that's going to be blocking the signal. There's some trees right over there that's blocking the signal. There's actually one point right here where we have a gap between trees. I mean, there's a couple points, but this particular gap, when we're driving right here, there's actually going to be a clear visual line of sight between the radar gun and our radar detector car. So there's going to be a point, and you'll see me point it out in the video, where I can actually see the radar car. And that's going to be kind of interesting here for the test coming up in the future. But I just want to point that out. So this is going to be the more difficult radar detector test. It doesn't look like much, but we do have some trees blocking the signal, and we do have a few slight curves in the road, which again don't look like a lot, but they're going to make a big difference in terms of obscuring and blocking some of the radar signal and making it tougher for a detector to pick up radar back here. And it's why a more sensitive detector is going to give you longer range. So anyways, with all that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the results with the Redline and the Cobra. We're going to use the same two detectors that we just looked at. We're also going to use the same exact radar gun that we were just operating on. The only difference that we're going to have here is going to be we're now operating on a different course with different terrain. So let's go ahead and take a look at the two detectors here. Now the way this is going to work with the two detectors, to make things really clear, I'm actually going to be showing you a couple things at the same time. And before I hit play and start the video, let me show you exactly what you're going to be seeing here on screen. So just like before, we're going to have the radar detector right here in the middle of the screen, and you're going to see exactly when it's going to go off. As soon as the radar detector goes off, I'm going to actually start a timer here just below it. And the timer is going to run all the way until the radar gun is able to acquire our speed. These two cameras are actually running at the exact same time, and I've synced up the video so that you can actually see while we're driving down the road, the radar car will be up here, and then in this perspective we're going to be driving down this way. And as soon as the radar gun is able to get our speed, I'm going to go ahead and stop the timer, and that's going to show us how much advanced warning we had before the radar gun was able to acquire our speed. So this is going to be really helpful, and it's going to make it really, really clear the differences between the two detectors. Again, if you remember, we started at the map. At the beginning of the course, we've got this red barn here on the left. That's this red barn right there. And this is going to be the beginning of the course, which is about half a mile away from the radar gun itself. So that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the two different detectors with this MPHB3 here. So yeah, pretty big difference, isn't there? You can see the red line gave us nearly half a mile of detection and about 36.1 seconds of warning time before the gun could acquire our speed. The Cobra, on the other hand, gave us 0.14 miles of range and only 4.7 seconds before the gun had our speed locked in. Had I been speeding and actually driving really fast, I'd have even less time to react. So as you guys saw from the very first test on the easier course, the Redline and the Cobra actually both gave plenty of warning, pretty similar performance, and both of them had plenty of detection range before our speed was actually able to be acquired, right? So as you can see, the course actually makes a huge, huge difference. So when things start getting a little bit more challenging in terms of terrain, that's when you'll really start to see the differences between the detectors actually crop up. Now, let's go ahead and run another test. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to run the Redline and then the Cobra. Same settings on the detectors, same course even. The only thing we're going to change is we're going to be using a different radar gun. Rather than the MPH-B3, we're going to use a Decatur Genesis 2. This one, instead of transmitting on 33.8, is going to transmit on 35.5. 35.5 is actually more challenging for radar detectors to detect, and because of that you're going to see range drop with both detectors. And you're going to see in this case how much range drops from the Redline and if that's still sufficient, and how much range is affected on the Cobra and how little warning time you're going to get from that detector as well. So let's take a look here at how these detectors compare on 35.5. Redline 35.5. Cobra versus 35.5. So as you can see, using a different radar gun also made a difference, didn't it? The Redline range got dropped quite a bit, but still plenty of time to get sufficient warning against constant on. If the instant on was being used, if the gun was actually in hold and not transmitting and was only being shot just to clock cars ahead of us with limited traffic, it would make it tougher even for a more sensitive detector like the Redline. And so that's why you really want to go for as much sensitivity as you possibly can, especially if you've got trees or anything around you like that. They can really absorb radar and cut down on range. Take a look at the Cobra. The range on that one was dropped even more. It was 2.1 seconds. That's pretty much nothing. Yeah, if you slam on the brakes as soon as you get that alert, you could just slow down in time, and that's great. One of the interesting things about the Cobra is it likes to actually misrepresent K-band blind spot false alerts as 35.5, and so driving around with this detector in the real world, I've actually started tuning out 35.5 just because you get so many false alerts on 35.5, and so if you were to ignore this alert, which is what I would do actually in practice with this detector, I would get owned against constant on running with this Cobra. So as you can see, we're definitely getting a big difference in terms of performance here with these detectors. Now, speaking of K-band false alerts, a lot of these detectors come with filters to help filter out false alerts that you get on K-band. Sometimes when you implement these filters, it'll actually drop your range as well, and so it's actually really good to know, the pros and cons of the different options. If it'll impact performance, by how much, when's a good time to use the filters, when you should turn the filters off to get better performance, etc. And so what we're going to look at next for our final 2 runs is actually 2 runs with the Redline. We're going to be running it against a K-band gun, and the only thing that we're going to be changing on the Redline are the filter settings. We're going to be first running it in highway mode with TSR off, and then I'm going to enable some K-band filters that help reduce the blind spot monitoring false alerts. We're going to be setting it to auto mode and enabling TSR, which is, again, going to help with the false alerts, but it's also going to be cutting down on range. And you're going to see back-to-back performances with both of those settings. First in the most sensitive performance mode, and then in a more filtered mode. So let's take a look at that now. And so as you can see, changing the K-band filtering options has a pretty noticeable impact on performance, right? It cut our range in half, from about half a mile to about quarter of a mile. In terms of how much warning we had before the kill zone, we had, originally 36 seconds, and that dropped to only 16 seconds. And while that's still enough time, against constant on, that's definitely, less than half the time to actually get a warning. So we can see that changing the K-band filtering options, it's really good to know this kind of stuff, and this is typically the case with these different options. And so it's definitely helpful to not only run a very capable sensitive radar detector, but also to understand the different pros and cons, features and limitations of the different settings and filters that are built into the radar detector. Sometimes it's more appropriate to run the filters. Sometimes it's more appropriate to turn off the filters. And so that's why I always recommend, not only running a good detector, but also taking the time to understand the different features and settings that it has available, and when it's appropriate to do this or do that. There is not necessarily a one-size-fits-all answer, as you can see. So now that you understand what this test is about, you can see the difference that the terrain makes, right? In some situations, the detector may perform really well. In other situations, the detector may perform very poorly. The radar gun being used can have a big impact. The settings and filtering options in your detector can have a big impact. So taking all this into account, how do all the different radar detectors compare? Like, do the high-end radar detectors really have a big noticeable difference compared to some of the mid-level or even low-level radar detectors? And that is what this radar detector test is designed to test. It's basically designed to see how much of a spread there really is between the different tiers of radar detectors, as well as, we also do some K-band testing to see how much the different filtering options impact performance. So in this test, we've got 10 different radar detectors that we're going to be testing. We test them on 33.8, 34.7, 35.5, as well as on K-band with various filtering options turned on and turned off. So all those results, I'm going to go ahead and work on them next now that this video is complete as far as kind of the introduction, the explanation of what this test is designed to show. Now that you guys are clear on that, I'm going to go ahead and finish up the results and presentation for all that, put that together. Once that is complete, you can click on the link in the video description and you'll be able to read over all of that in detail for all these different detectors on different bands. So there you go. I hope that's been a helpful illustration between different detectors, different terrains, different settings, all that good stuff. And yeah, hope that's been helpful. If you guys like it, please subscribe. And until next time, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.